Good morning and welcome to Friday's OTB AM. What a monster weekend of sport we have coming for you. Delighted to have you along with us this morning. Myself and Owen Shane, as always, on a Friday morning. Owen, good morning to you.
A very good morning to you.
What's happening?
Not much.
You've never been to a Six Nations game?
Yeah, we had this conversation earlier in the week, but I wanted to have it again because somebody out there might have tickets for me.
Literally, Owen said, yeah, let's do it again because somebody might want me to go with them to the game.
Somebody might feel sorry for me. Plenty of people feel sorry for me all the time, but they might feel sorry for me in a specific way.
Would you be open to any randomer saying, I've got one spare ticket, come to the game with me? Is that...
Well, I'd need to do a background check, get a few detectives on the case, and if it comes back all clear, then absolutely.
Tight window for that, that's all I'm thinking, you know.
Well, my detectives are quick operators.
And so why have you never been to a Six Nations game before?
Dunno, I guess I'm not part of a rugby club.
I'm also not part of it. I mean, and to be fair, I suppose I've worked at a bunch of them, but I'm just surprised that at some point or another the curiosity wouldn't have got the better of you.
The curiosity's always been there. I've been to plenty of November international games. Those tickets are generally easier to get though, aren't they?
More genuine people probably is what you'd say. It's more like the November internationals, because I mean people who regular viewers will be aware that you are a very regular attendee, sometimes working and sometimes just, you know, going along to watch the game, at league games to follow Kerry around the country. So that's probably the equivalent, is it, the November internationals?
Yeah, definitely.
Or genuine, sort of.
Definitely, I would definitely consider myself more genuine than anybody else. Yeah, let's go along with that. But that's the point exactly. It's like if you're a member of a rugby club and you contribute to grassroots rugby in Ireland, you absolutely should be heading along to the Six Nations games, and those should be the people that get first priority. So I've never once decided, you know what, I'm going to stand in front of them in the queue for this game. I will know my place and watch the game in my own house.
Screw that. And like, I mean, because, you know, there's also the Valentine's weekend in Rome, sort of comes around every couple of years. There's just, I mean, what I'm saying is there are social reasons to attend these games.
Have you done Valentine's weekend in Rome?
Paddy's weekend in England used to be a thing. Obviously not this time around.
Big National League weekend. Sorry, Ireland rugby.
You'd always be involved around the business end as well, of course, is the reality. I have done Valentine's weekend in Rome several times for the rugby. Several times.
And has that been a successful entry for you?
Well, I've been working over there on my own, so does that count as success?
Well, you know, everybody loves their own company.
That's true. That's true.
It was as romantic as it could possibly be, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So, right, well, look, if you're out there and you've got a spare ticket for the England game this weekend, would you take any game that's upcoming over the next while? Does it have to be England?
Yeah, well, I'd go to Murrayfield if there was plane tickets.
Oh, willing to travel as well,
yeah,
right?
willing to travel. This is a big commitment right here.
Wow.
So I'm netting my colours to the Six Nations Mass this morning.
You could also do the other thing, which is either go and try and buy some tickets or just get some tickets, given you're sort of such a high-profile member of the media that... This wouldn't be... What I'm saying to you is the only route to you going to a Six Nations game doesn't have to be in the company of somebody you don't know.
No, yes it does. Yes it does. Let's keep the narrative going here, Adrian. I'm not buying Six Nations tickets.
Monster weekend of sport ahead, including the... and maybe chief amongst them, the Ireland-England game tomorrow at the Aviva, and we're going to be chatting about that in much more detail a little bit later on. Huge weekend of GAA as well. Who've Kerry got this weekend on?
They're away to Cavan.
Away to Cavan.
Park.
Reading Kieran Donaghy in his column in the Star this morning, it's a long trip was the first point that he made in his piece today. You've been up there a few times, have you? He was saying Fermanagh was the last time he would have played against Kerry in Cavan, oddly.
Wow, really? That's an interesting one. Like I can't... The last time Kerry were up there was 2 years ago, but I don't think Donaghy was playing at that time, so a different thing. I always say that the fans who actually travel up from Kerry to those games are far more genuine Kerry fans than I am. Like, I'm literally just going an hour and a half up the road from Dublin. So I don't have
any choice on. There's no point of self-flagellating about it like it's...
Well, no, I'm not self-flagellating.
What you could do is go down to Tralee, you know, put in an appearance, clock in the passport, and then say, I'm going to be more genuine now by heading up to Cavan from here as opposed to going from Dublin.
You could do that. You absolutely could do that. I guess I have no option, but I am just stating that, you know, there are far more fans who are far more dedicated than I am to the cause.
But you're not lacking in genuineness just because your journey is shorter.
Some might say I am. Some pedantic people might say I am. What were you saying? Oh yeah, last time they were up there was against Fermanagh in Cavan. I wasn't at that game, so you know, there's another black mark against how genuine I am.
Yeah. Westmeath Carlow, obviously the big... I know a lot of people will be keeping an eye on that this weekend.
100% records on the line?
Yeah. and Westmeath going for three wins in a row.
Westmeath had an unbelievable turnaround last week. They were down 11 points to 3 and ended up winning the game.
8 points down with 25 minutes to go. And also Offaly had I think the keeper had a 40 with the last kick of the game, I think, something like that, and missed it. So,
I know it's not possible with a lack of actual technology to do it, but you would love to be able to watch all those Division 2 and 3 games on demand whenever you wanted to, because for a county like Westmeath, and despite what they did in Leinster last year for a county like Carlow as well, this is the big part of their year.
There's a huge mark to be served there with, whatever about live coverage of the games, because in some ways you kind of expect that maybe you're not quite going to get that, but even some sort of significant highlights package that half the country aren't being served, essentially. Division 3 and 4, as far as I understand, you don't see any of those games anywhere.
No,
appearing at any point.
The thing is, with the Super 8s and all that, we get plenty of the big counties during the summer. That really, if Westmeath are on television at some point at the start of the year, you're like, who's this player, who's that player? I literally haven't seen them play. And you can read all the articles you want to and try and do as much reading as possible, but nothing actually beats sitting down and actually watching the game in full. I know, as I say, the technology probably isn't there. There's only so many television vans that can get to games and stuff.
Yeah.
But
because it doesn't have to be full-on broadcast.
True.
I know you have to have some sort of a presence there, but like as a public service remit, you would think that actually not serving half of the country is not a great thing. People will say, get up off your arse and go to the game. I totally get that. I absolutely understand that, and that's fully my intention that at some point or another that I would get to some of the Westmeath games coming over the course of the year. So.
Well, keep us updated on all that. Were you watching...
Super Bowl, by the way, we need to mention Super Bowl.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later on. Were you following the transfer deadline day last night?
A little bit.
Transfer deadline night?
Yeah, a little bit.
Didn't make it to Jim White for the first time in a long time. I usually do, but it's really sort of...
He's omnipresent, though, you see, as well as the thing now. He's not just
on radio as well as television. Yeah. So you could have got your fix going home on the radio and TalkSport yesterday as well. It's very hard to pick out a highlight from yesterday, but if I had to be pushed for a highlight from transfer deadline day yesterday, it was Abu Bakar Kamara, who left Fulham and he joined Turkish club Yeni Malatyaspor, if I've got that right. And he looks relatively happy. The Yeni board look unhappy completely. They look absolutely distraught at the idea that they've signed Abu Bakar Kamara from Fulham. Got us thinking about all those other times, the iconic moments that we've seen footballers and indeed other people really unhappy with a deadline day signing, or indeed an earlier signing. Emmanuel Frimpong joining Barnsley is one of the more famous examples. Here he is looking particularly chuffed that he's joined them. Christoph Samba, when he joined Panathinaikos a while back, gave us this photo. Chuffed to join the Greek powerhouse. And then Andros Townsend here has got that Spursy feeling after joining Tottenham. And then one of my most favourite is Kolo Toure revealing he's a Rangers fan when he joined Celtic a couple of years back. That is pretty much as far as you can go in terms of anything that you could glean from yesterday. Just a miserable photo of everybody around Kamara after he left Fulham. Unfortunately, it's a thing of the past, the glory of transfer deadline day.
Kolo Toure, particularly, who's a guy obviously who's full of joie de vivre generally. Like you'd rarely see him sort of laughing and smiling about something or other.
Well, exactly. There's a conspiracy theory right there that he was a Rangers fan.
Yeah, there we go. Right, get your comments coming into us. Here's what's coming up between now and about 9:30. It's going to be the sports pages very shortly. We'll let you know what's making the back page headlines. Phil Thompson. Is it a debut for Phil Thompson? I think it might be.
Yes.
On OTB AM. That's coming your way. Obviously, just a massive week, really, for Liverpool, and potentially a massive couple of months ahead. So we are really interested to get the thoughts of Phil Thompson. That's coming your way just after about 8:10, thereabouts. It's a big weekend at GAA as well, so we're going to run you through the highlights of that at about 8:25. Darren's going to be in the studio for all the sports news this morning just after 8:30, and then we're going to have Alan Quinlan, as always on a Friday, but this morning we're going to be joined by Mike Tindall, because it's such a massive weekend of Ireland versus England. Mike Tindall is a pretty interesting voice in the area. He's a guy who played, by my research last night, 7 times against Ireland, and has a bit of a mixed record. So we're going to speak to him to preview that game, and that is all coming your way at about 8:45. So that's what's upcoming. As I said, do keep your comments coming into us on the hashtag if you're on YouTube, Facebook. Anything reasonable, we'll pretty much guarantee that we'll bring our viewers' ways. So do keep your comments coming into us. We're going to take a quick look, however, to begin things with the newspapers this morning, and we're going to kick off with the Irish Independent today, which is all about the rugby, as most of these newspapers are this morning. Jones, pressure is on Ireland. Eddie Jones, I mean, I think the mind game started probably about 2 weeks ago when he was talking about playing 9 forwards, and he was going to play Jack Noel as a number 7. Pressure is on Ireland, he says, and look, maybe he's right. That's the Rugby England boss fears that Murray's aerial bombardment fears Murray's aerial bombardment, but he's confident that his side can beat what he calls the best team in the world. Tony Kelly hit with a one-match ban in a test case. Right, Colin Keys here. This is the questionable, certainly debatable red card that he picked up, Tony Kelly, last weekend for that challenge with Patrick Maher. And Colin Keys is writing that it's a bit of a test case, that referees have been instructed to take action when it comes to any head-high challenges, so that actually it removes almost any debate from the equation. There was contact made with the head, letter of the law, that's a red card, and letter of the law, it's a one-match ban.
I'd be very interested to see how this develops over the course of the league if we start to see more red cards like Tony Kelly's. I think fair enough if there's a level of consistency about it, that even if it's not deliberate, which Tony Kelly's clearly wasn't, if it's not deliberate but it still poses a danger to the opposition, if they continue to be met with harsh punishment like it was last Saturday night, I'd be very interested to see how a number of people react. Like you look at Derek McGrath and Anthony Daly on League Sunday last Sunday, in particular Anthony Daly, very, very unhappy with the Tony Kelly sending off, despite the fact that there is an argument to be made that even though it wasn't deliberate, he wasn't careful with his opponent. Now the thing is, it's not like rugby where you kind of engage yourself into a tackle and there's a sort of uniformity to it. And like, say for example, the Danny Cipriani red card at Thommo Park a couple of months ago, there was a clear argument to be made that it wasn't deliberate, but he's putting the opposition in a bit of danger with the way he set his body up. Now with the Tony Kelly situation, he's also putting his opponent in a bit of danger, but there's far less uniformity to the way you tackle in hurling. Far less than rugby anyway. So it's very hard to actually sort of create a culture where you can be tough and safe at the same time.
Is it though? Is it possible to introduce a similar sort of a legislation to hurling where you would say you have, because suddenly that brings a bit of clarity to it. If you're saying to, in that instance, and actually the Tony Kelly case, Colin Keys is describing here as a test case, in that the idea of not challenging the head is going to be a thing. But if you were to introduce the idea of that responsibility to the opponent, actually suddenly that brings a bit of clarity to that Tony Kelly instance, and suddenly you don't have Anthony Daly being, and I didn't see it, incensed on League Sunday last weekend, because everybody then...
I don't want to say he was incensed.
Angry about it, whatever it was, that he certainly disagreed with it by the sounds of things. So suddenly nobody challenges the idea that actually he's made contact with the head, and it doesn't matter about, it might have been sort of half right or half wrong, or maybe it was a little bit harsh. It just happened, and he has a responsibility to his opponent. In some ways, maybe some clarity around the language of it would help people understand this a little bit better. Potentially.
Well, the thing is, within the rules already, you're not allowed to shoulder a man when he's going down for the ball, for example. So that automatically takes away a good possibility of making shoulder connection to the head, like they've obviously clamped down so much on in rugby. It's those face-to-face contacts. If a man is running right at you and you go for the shoulder, but he stays, like if he has his body open towards you and it's not shoulder to shoulder, that could lead to a lot of damage without being deliberately violent towards your opponent. So I think that's the very thin line there. As I say, it'll be very interesting to see if the hurling referees continue to clamp down on it like this, because it's, I don't want to say it's a quicker sport than rugby when two players are running at full speed, but it's certainly quicker and it's certainly a lot less predictable. It's
probably, I wouldn't say it is, but the obvious thing is that they've got to all intents and purposes, a fairly significant weapon in their hands that, you know, even if it's not intended to use it in the wrong way, it obviously can do damage. But yeah, I think the responsibility to the opponent actually from a rugby context is something that might work in hurling, because it just clears things up and it actually covers a multitude, and it means that there's no great debate about it afterwards that, well, I didn't quite mean to do it. Actually, the responsibility is on you.
Yeah. We'll see. I just can also see there being a bit of not just a bit of a backlash, a big backlash to this.
To use that language coming from rugby into hurling, I think straight off the bat is going to be an
Brace
issue,
yourselves.
isn't it? The Irish Examiner this morning again leads with the rugby all fired up is the headline here. Praise can make you weak, warns Eddie Jones, but Ronan O'Gara believes that Ireland are just a better team. Roger's piece this morning asked by his editor on to write a piece, make a case, urged the email from the sports editor, that it's a good thing in the long run to lose the Six Nations opener at home to England this weekend. Can't make that case, says Rog. I responded, it'll be a very short column. He replied, but see how Exeter came to Thommo Park, almost did a number on Munster. Won't that serve Van Graham well? And Rog says, look, he almost has a point, but actually there's no upside to losing to England this weekend, and almost, I suppose you could say, there's no upside really in a World Cup context to losing any of these games.
Yeah,
Six Nations.
And I totally agree. Munster will have been far improved by that Exeter game, but they won that extra game. So the improvement comes from the fact that they were in a tough situation and managed to eke out a win. All things, if you could have the ideal situation, every single game is an extremely tight and tough affair from an Irish perspective, but they win every game. But you can't have that decision. That's not a decision you can go into any game and say, we're going to win in a very tight manner. You go out and you try and slaughter your opponent as much as you can. So I just think the notion that Joe Schmidt is potentially thinking that losing any of these games is a better thing than winning these games.
No, he definitely won't be thinking that. It'll be a hindsight thing where you go, but us slaughtering all of our opponents during the Six Nations, I think would be a fantastic thing for Ireland.
Well, it's also not going to happen.
We might slaughter a few of them. But yeah, because there's the traditional Irish thing of, well, we don't really want to slaughter them all because then the knives will be out first and they'll want to chop the head off as poppies or whatever. I actually think that us going out there and slaughtering the hell out of every comer that comes between now and the Rugby World Cup. And by the way, like tomorrow's game is, I was going to say arguably, but probably inarguably our biggest game before the Rugby World Cup as well. So if we were to lose that, you almost can't regain that at any point because there won't be any bigger games before the Rugby World Cup.
I think Murrayfield is absolutely huge, given they are the only opponents that were guaranteed to play again this autumn. And the trends that they've been on recently, that if they beat us in Murrayfield, that Scotland game suddenly becomes a far more talked about prospect in the lead up to what has become a cemented top seed place from our World Cup pool. Yeah. And that becomes far more of a discussion if we lose. But anyway, we're getting ahead of the England game. Yeah. I think if we're going to slaughter someone, I think tomorrow we've got every chance of doing so.
I fancy us doing a number on Scotland in Murrayfield, by the way. Shoving their haggises up their hoops.
Oh, I can hear that clip being played next Monday week after we lose in Murrayfield.
The Irish Daily Mail this morning, again, it's Robbie Henshaw here, and Joe's full backing is the contender there for tab of the morning. Rory Keane writes, Henshaw will thrive in the new role, says Schmidt. It's one of the most fascinating aspects of tomorrow's game, the switch from Robbie Henshaw back to 15. And Crouch vows to seize his chance at Burnley. There's a lot of the headlines this morning on Peter Crouch's return to the Premier League. He played about 25 games for Stoke in the Championship this season. Had gone from a place obviously where he was getting splinters in his arse when they were in the Premier League and he couldn't get a game. So he's talking, 38-year-old, talking about how he's excited to be back in the Premier League. But I just fear that Peter Crouch at Burnley might end up doing a bit of a subs job again.
Yeah, maybe the splinters in Burnley are more pleasant than the splinters at Stoke City. And maybe he just loves the idea of playing in the Premier League. I know I certainly would. If I was 38 years old and a Premier League club was interested in me, I'd go and sit on the bench. Probably a bit more of a limelight there if you come off the bench and score one winning goal in a Premier League game. Like Burnley have likely made that signing thinking about one potential set of 3 points. It's not like a Jermaine Defoe signing for Sunderland a couple of years ago where from January onwards he single-handedly keeps them up. Burnley are in a position at the moment where I think they're going to be safe, even though they technically have to talk to themselves into the sense that they're in a relegation battle. I can see Peter Crouch scoring a last-minute winner after playing for 5 minutes in one of the games, and that 3 points would be totally worth that move.
Where did John Walter say he was at on his injury comeback when he was with us?
Well, he's back at the training ground, obviously, because he was en route. So I think he's close to full training. Like, what you want to see is Robbie Brady back in that team, putting balls in on top of Peter Crouch's head. Jeff Hendricks, obviously, playing regularly at the moment as well, after a slight blip in terms of not being in the starting 11 before Christmas. So let's hope Peter Crouch just becomes the Republic of Ireland enabler.
Yeah. That's certainly one way of looking at it, right? The Irish Times this morning as well, it's rugby here. Schmidt backs solutions man Henshaw to make the switch. There was one interesting quote from Joe Schmidt from that piece that Jerry Thornley writes about in the Irish Times this morning, in one of the other papers, about the solutions aspect of it. He says that he really could ask Robbie Henshaw to play anywhere in the pitch. He said, if I said to him, look Robbie, I'm thinking about putting you at number 8, he'd look a bit bemused, but he'd say, yeah, I just need to get the calls. I'll see Greg Feek and make sure I'm nailed on at scrum time. So that's the attitude that you get from Athlone People Own, I think, is the short story generally out of that one. That's Jerry Thornley looking ahead to that. Some reflections as well that who schooled who when Aki met Tuolangi in 2007. This was in a schools match, another part of the preview there. And Jones insists that England can upset Ireland. Shock headline.
Back page of the Herald is edge of the seat. Schmidt quick to dismiss England boring barb. So Joe Schmidt has pledged Ireland will provide edge of the seat entertainment in tomorrow's opener, despite the fact that we've been dismissed as boring by one of England's coaches. The back page of the Sun goes with, I was going to say tab of the morning to you, but it's a fairly straightforward pun when you're talking about Maurizio Sarri. They go with Sarri seems to be the hardest word. Bullish blues boss won't ditch style. And the Mirror go with the exact same headline. Sarri seems to be the hardest words. Chelsea boss fears he's being ignored by his players. And you've also got that story about Robbie Henshaw starting at 15. Another Sarri pun on the back of the Irish Daily Star this morning. They go with Sarri state of affairs. Chelsea boss is feeling the pressure. You've also got Ants signs on. That could be a fairly notable moment from transfer deadline day. It wasn't a transfer, it was Anthony Martial putting pen to paper on a new 5-year deal at Old Trafford. Back of the Guardian this morning is, can you feel the power? Ice Cool Jones says England can shock the champions. You've also got a bit of cricket there in terms of the main picture. Main photo on the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section is also the cricket in Antigua, but Eddie Jones is saying, we will make the nation proud. England coach says there is no need for mind games and his street fighters can win. And the back page of the Racing Post, their rugby story is aiming high. Paris win can be catalyst for Welsh Six Nations title tilt. You've also on the front of the Racing Post, Dublin Festival timing switch in bid to beat Free. So Leopardstown has taken extra precautions to protect this weekend's Grade 1 extravaganza. Moving tomorrow's 3 chases, including Min's potential clash with Footpad in the Dublin chase, to the end of a 7-card race. So it's obviously going to be frosty conditions early days tomorrow if you're heading along to Leopardstown.
Bernard Brogan, assuming not the Bernard Brogan on YouTube here, says that if Kerry were playing in the Six Nations, I bet Owen would go.
Well, you know, he's caught me off guard there.
He could be onto something.
He's caught me off guard there. I didn't really think of that eventuality. Hopefully they'll get into it sometime.
Adrian McGrath on YouTube says the Tony Kelly decision is going to further remove physicality from hurling, giving more support to ball retention. Yeah,
I do think the Tony Kelly sending off on Saturday night is a fairly significant moment in terms of what we're going to see. Maybe not just this season, because change sometimes takes a while to happen in Gaelic games, but over the next couple of seasons, I think he's onto something there.
Yeah, ball retention has never really been a huge thing in hurling, though. Is the only thing.
Maybe not ball retention.
Clare brought in 2013. They did quite a bit of that sort of short passing thing that they capped a lot of heat for, and then went on to win the All Ireland.
Yeah, well, Don Logue and his puck outs back in the day would have.
I've always thought that the sort of possession game in hurling, I don't understand how you so frequently give up the ball to. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know the exact percentages, but frequently it's a 50-50 ball. I mean, your man might be in a better sort of diagonal ball, slightly better position or whatever, but generally, I've just never understood it. Like, I know you can hit the ball 70 or 80 yards if you want, but actually guaranteed possession 20 yards up the pitch surely is better.
Yeah, you would say so. Like, the diagonal ball does seem to be the happy medium, and Kilkenny were employing that quite a bit last weekend in the league as well. Of course, Brian Cody doesn't do tactics, but it did seem that the corner forwards and the full forward had a certain autonomy to just drift off to the sideline, and if the sliotar happened to be on the far side of the pitch, you can expect that ball, and those diagonal balls seemed to work a treat for them last weekend. So I think that is the happy medium between ball retention on a short game basis and, you know, just pucking the ball 70 metres and see where it lands.
And it might be a bit of a mix as well. Like, it doesn't have to be sort of all one or the other. Surely if we're to be considered World Cup contenders, we must win the Grand Slam, says Darren Dohney. 5 games versus 7 with similar demands in terms of standards. And Sam Funnell sort of just utterly misrepresenting what happened earlier on by saying, so Schmidt sees Henshaw as a number 8. I think he was not quite what he was saying. It wasn't quite an Eddie Jones, Jack Noel could play 7.
It's a good point, though. I was kind of thinking about that myself, about the Grand Slam and World Cup mirror image that they are. Like, you could put down Ireland sometimes not winning a Six Nations as a grand Six Nations. Say on a year, like on the even number of years, when you have to travel to Twickenham and you have to travel to Paris. Say if you win one of those games and you lose the other one and you win the rest of your games and you come second in the Six Nations, you say to yourself, that's a good Six Nations. We didn't win it, we came second. But to win a World Cup, you need to put in a Grand Slam performance. Like, you need to win every single game, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all relative to where we're at the minute. I remember, I may be wrong with my years, it may be 2003 or 2004 when we won the first Triple Crown in God knows how many years. I have the 3 programmes at home from that.
Would have been 04. I'll show you England at the Slam.
Yes, it was 04, yeah. And I have the 3 programmes at home that at some point I'm going to put into a frame, but that tells you what a monster deal that was at the time. Whereas now, exactly like you're saying, like a Triple Crown now would be almost seen, if we only won a Triple Crown, it would almost be seen as a failure.
Yeah, it's true. Like, winning a Triple Crown this year would probably constitute a Grand Slam, I think. I think we're going to beat France at home, and I think we're going to look after Italy. So I then think the Triple Crown is the harder part on a year like this year.
We're going to murder them. What was the slaughter them? Was what you were saying earlier on.
Of England.
all comers?
Well, potentially. I think Ireland will be licking their chops at the scent of England tomorrow.
You watch more rugby than you let on when you're using that kind of expression. There's nothing genuine about that kind of.
I never said I didn't watch loads of rugby. I do, but I just watch it from my home instead of outdoing a genuine rugby club man.
Right, get your comments coming into us on the hashtag or on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and we shall bring them to you before we leave you, which will be just over an hour's time. We've lots of good stuff coming your way. We're going to be speaking to Mike Tindall and Alan Quinlan on the rugby. Phil Thompson is going to be standing by to chat about the weekend's football and obviously about the Monday night game as well, where Liverpool are in action against West Ham. So that's all coming your way, and do keep your comments coming our way. Last night on Off the Ball, Kilkenny and Ballyhale Shamrocks hurler Colin Fennelly joined Nathan for a chat around his club's journey in the AIB All-Ireland Club Hurling Championships, and there's loads of that conversation. You can check out the full piece up on our website or up on our YouTube channel. But the lads also got talking about Colin's time in the army.
The Lebanon is grand.
I've heard it's like it's the best training camp in the world. That when thankfully at times when there's peace over there, that actually you're training twice a day. You come back built like a tank.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no. I came back like a tank, but there's plenty of lads that come back like tanks. All right. But there was nothing happening over there. You get your run in, you get your gym in during the day, and that's pretty much it.
So whereas some people maybe look at teaching as a good profession for GAA players, you just went a slightly different route.
Slightly different, yeah. No. So certainly with the army, there was a lot more leeway. So it was, and you were able to. They gave time towards sports. They emphasised a lot of the army on sports, which was obviously suited me.
And did you enjoy it? Or was it very much a means to an end?
A means to an end, to be honest. I enjoyed it only because doing so well with Kilkenny.
Right.
There's no job satisfaction in it for me. I'm sure for certain lads they do, but in the army itself, there's nothing to do. It's obviously a good thing. There's nothing to do, as in army-wise. But other than that, you walk down to the locker rooms and actually see lads sitting around doing nothing, because there's just nothing to do. And from things like this, like people coming out and saying there's nothing to do, and then the high lads are wondering what's going on, how come lads are doing nothing, and then they kind of enforce things to happen, but there's literally nothing to do.
What sort of issues? Is it just boredom?
Just boredom, absolute boredom. And and again, from this, the top lads will probably come down and say, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, and there's actually nothing to do. It's a whole revamp that needs to be done.
And what would you like to be doing? What would you? It's a conversation that probably doesn't happen very often, and you're out of it now. You can be perfectly honest.
More options, they could easily. They do trades in there in the army, and you'd like to see a lot more lads push towards doing the trades and maybe helping out in different ways. There's so many barracks there as well. They're all closed down. They could be opened up for so much more. There's so much more help to probably communities that can be done. It's not being done, and it's crazy. Just comparing to the nurses, how much work they do. And again, it's not the lads at the bottom. It's not their fault. It's not the people at the top either. They can't say, go do more hill walks and stuff. It's.
Yeah, it sounds as though you're almost creating a situation where you're encouraging laziness among very fit young men in their 20s who, as you say, if they were steered in the right direction, firstly, they can be coming out of the army with good qualifications that will serve them from then on. But also at that age, they can be using that experience in local communities, in voluntary organisations, and making use of their time.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't too bad. I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have a family to pay for, and that was grand. But I can't imagine how other lads pay for it. But then you kind of see where the work is, there's nothing to do. You wonder how you can ask for more money. But certainly with lads with families and stuff they need to build their future there.
Yeah, Colin Fennelly on the show with Nathan last night. That was just a short segment of a longer chat you can check out up on our YouTube channel and on offtheball.com. The Defence Forces were in touch last night to issue a rebuttal of their own, saying, we're surprised and disappointed to hear these comments from the former member. Ugly Naharan takes pride in our members, they say. who achieve at the highest levels in sport. However, while sport is an integral aspect of our culture, it's not the only aspect. Óglaigh na hÉireann prides itself on the dedication and sacrifice that its men, women and their families make daily in defence of the state, assisting government agencies and working in multinational peacekeeping missions. We also offer unique career opportunities and specialist training for our soldiers, sailors and aircrew who wish to develop themselves personally and professionally. So that was the response of the Defence Forces yesterday, and as I said, that full piece available up on offtheball.com. And needless to say, there's been a breadth of response to that piece of Colin Fennelly yesterday, both from you and from the broader media as well, and it covers all aspects of the debate. So an interesting conversation worth checking out up on our YouTube channel. We're going to be joined a little bit later on by Mike Tindall and Alan Quinlan. We're going to preview the weekend's rugby. There's plenty to speak about in that regard. Also, the hurling conversation, Owen, has struck a bit of a note with some people. Hitting hope ball in hurling 90% of the time, says Sean too on YouTube.
90% of the time, probably. Is it? Well, no, I'm not sure. I think 90% is a bit strong, but there is certainly an element of hit and hope. But there is also, I can't believe I'm making so many rugby comparisons this morning. Rugby fever is really set in.
Genuineness is diminishing by the minute.
There is a sense of kind of territorial advantage when you puck the ball 80 yards. It's out of your danger zone. It's in the opposition danger zone.
The only difficulty is it can come right back down your neck 2 seconds later.
Well, that's what they're thinking as well. It's just constant territorial bombardment. And if it comes off, it's not that big a risk, but the potential reward is massive if you win the ball in that position. So why wouldn't you do it? Like, if you think about it tactically, it actually makes sense sometimes.
Well, isn't it almost, couldn't you argue as well, by the exact same token, that it's actually panicky? That what you're saying is that, you know, it's not in our territory, it's so far away that nobody can score from there anyway. But actually, isn't there a little bit of panic about that, as opposed to, you know, like Bernard Brogan's been back in touch with us again, I'll point out it's not the... when you can hit the ball over 100 metres in hurling, it sometimes makes sense just to let rip from the defensive square to the offensive lineup. Yeah,
I agree. Like, put it this way, if you're a football team and you win the ball back under your posts, and let's just say you can kick the ball 100 yards, you would definitely do it, because if you've just won the ball back under your posts, first of all, the defensive formation has not developed on the opposition side. So that means that you have far more of a chance of actually winning primary possession. And because you can't kick the ball 100 yards, you have to move the ball a lot slower in football, and that allows time for a defensive structure to come into place. And that is why blanket defences are much more of an issue in football than they are in hurling. In fact, blanket defences aren't an issue in hurling.
Yeah, but
the sweeper and the blanket defence is a far different thing.
Hurling defences probably keep their shape a bit more on that very basis. Like, hurling defences understand that actually if the opposition get this ball,
they don't overload
100 yards down our neck, we're going to have to be here, so there's no point in them pushing forward in any way. So, you know, I'm all for knocking 15, 20 yards up the pitch and keep doing that.
It's been done. It's certainly been done over the last couple of years, but I do think it's not so much hit and hope. I think there is a method to the madness.
And method to the madness was very much the case as well at Anfield during the week when Liverpool managed to grind it out against Leicester. John Giles, though, was not overly happy with the ground staff on Wednesday night.
Well, I think they should be up before the Football Association for that. I mean, the lads on the television that I was watching were making a bit of fun of it, a bit of a joke with it. I didn't think it was funny, and today I still don't think it was funny. I thought it was very, very bad. Now, I wouldn't imagine that Klopp had anything to do with that. Maybe he had, I don't know, but I wouldn't think he had, because the same Klopp, was it last year when they played West Brom, accused West Brom of putting too much water on the pitch to slow the game down. Now, what the ground staff were thinking about, I don't know. But it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how can you work 15 minutes at half time in the opponent's penalty area? I mean, it's not right, and I think there will be more made of it than there was made of it on the television last night.
Yeah, even watching it at the start of the second half, it almost felt as well it could have ended up being quite self-defeating, because Liverpool obviously also hold possession inside their own half, and they like to get their keeper involved, that it could have come back to haunt them.
Well, it could have. You know, Leicester were good. Leicester have been having a bad time, the manager's under pressure. But they could have snaked that match last night, Nathan. You know, they had chances. They didn't sit back for 90 minutes. They had chances to get at Liverpool, and they took them. You know, they did one or two very, very good chances to win that game. So Liverpool, like a lot of Liverpool supporters, would be disappointed they got a draw, but it could have been worse. Could have been worse on the night.
And I'm delighted to say that the Liverpool legend Phil Thompson joins us on the line. Morning to you, Phil.
Have I got to listen to this? This is absolutely ridiculous, and John should know better. It's been ever thus. It's a storm in a teacup, and I'm not just saying it because it's Liverpool. Over the years of watching football, and I've seen it, and John should. Why I'm saying John should know. Going back not too far, when the football pitches were cutting up and there was divots, the ground staff would always get out there, and what they would do, they would always put the divots back in the offensive third for the home team, and that was ever thus, and that's why they do it, and that's why they will have done it. Of doing it because it's cricket. What did the ground staff do with cricket? It makes the pitch better on the way the home team likes to play the cricket. It's been ever thus in all sports.
Does he not have a point, Phil, that it's in modern day football it's unsportsmanlike?
Oh, come. Well, they haven't got time to do the whole pitch, and if that's what he's trying to say, they get out there, and that's what it's been done. And that's why maybe people were making it. John's trying to make a big thing of this. I've seen it happen before. There was a lot. It was like slush on the pitch, which was slowing it down. The only thing I'll agree with him is Leicester did have a lot of chances, and it did negate the quick passing from the back and through the middle. But to go on, and it should be brought up before the FA, I think, oh my goodness. I've seen it happen so often in times. Sometimes they come out, sometimes they go and they do the lines if there's a bit of snow on them. Or if there's anything, they clear them away. And if it's given Liverpool an advantage, obviously that's a thing. Obviously because that's the home team. But, oh my goodness, it's a storm in a teacup, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and just a final point on it, Phil, just to kind of say what Liverpool have actually said. Oliver Brown in the Telegraph has said that Liverpool, for their part, have had little time for any accusations of cynicism. Their position is that they focus resources on the cop end during inclement weather, since the size of the stand creates a slight depression that causes water to accumulate, is what they say. I'd be interested to see what would have happened if this was, say, Leeds and Marcelo Bielsa who had employed such a tactic.
I'm not Michael Fish, I'm afraid, who does our weather.
Phil, talk to us about the on-pitch events, obviously, during the week. And like, it's kind of struck me in some ways that maybe Liverpool players and management had seen the City result and almost, instead of being inspired by it and thinking, sort of puffing up their chest a bit and thinking, actually, this is ours now to win, they almost seem to get a bit frozen by that result.
Absolutely, and that's the way it's going to go now between the end of the season. People think it was all going to be fine for Liverpool, and the result after the Man City result was all done and dusted. It doesn't work like that. It can be pressure on both ways. Didn't we see something quite similar? I did the Manchester City game. They were scoring early, seemed to negate the way they wanted to play. It's like, oh, we scored, now we're going to score again in a minute. And the passing was too slow. Hence, the same thing happened with Liverpool. The passing, again, was too slow. The pitch, as we used to say a few years ago, the pitch was a leveller because the pitch was slowing up the ball. And, of course, for the home team and Liverpool, who want to attack a bit quicker, it didn't help with their moving the ball quickly. So it does bring its own pressure with this. And I think that's what Liverpool are going to have to deal with. That's what Jurgen Klopp is going to have to do for players. But the same with Manchester City, because they didn't sort of deal with it very well against Newcastle.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing about Manchester City obviously is they don't have, I mean, I use the word loosely, but the baggage of that gap between drinks, as we'd say, from a Liverpool perspective. And at times like that, Phil, I suppose in a lot of ways that you look to the manager, right, as a sort of a lightning rod for a lot of this stuff. I did see an interview that he'd done with the BBC at some point, it might have been actually pre that game during the week, where he was saying he wasn't really enjoying the pressure of it, that it wasn't something to enjoy. It struck me as a bit of an odd comment maybe in some ways from Jurgen Klopp, who should be trying to take the heat maybe off some of his players here.
Yeah, listen, it's pressure. The thing is, Manchester City have been there. They've done it. They won the title last year in absolutely fantastic style. And so you could say that they can deal with it. Jurgen Klopp, I'm quite surprised at it, because he dealt with it, particularly in Dortmund, when you're playing against sort of the side like Bayern Munich and you've got huge pressure knowing that Bayern Munich can win every single game. And I just think, and I do find that quite odd when he's saying he finds it very difficult to deal with the pressure. Listen, I'd rather have this pressure of being 5 points ahead, letting everybody else catch up, and let Pep maybe having Spurs only 2 points behind them now, being a little bit closer for them.
Yeah, and like the overall thing for me, sort of regardless of, because there's an element of supposition here, right, in terms of how the squad or the management are feeling, and from what we read about Anfield during the week, there was a bit of a subdued atmosphere from the fans as well, and like regardless of how that impacted during the week, it's now become a real conversation that maybe this team might have frozen up a little bit, and it's going to become a very different challenge for them now, isn't it, over the next few weeks?
No, you just got to accept it, and I know that's possibility is always there. That's why I'm saying, since you've been there, Liverpool players haven't, so it's there. It's to embrace it. You have to embrace the pressure, and it does. And obviously, I'm talking from a position where I won 7 times, and you won it again and again, but that brings its own pressure. These players have to embrace it and have to say, what a fantastic position we are in. We can do something absolutely phenomenal for this football club, which should be talked about for absolute years. Don't be fearful of it. Don't sort of clam up. Enjoy it. Embrace it. Be bullish. Go for it. All those sayings. And that's what I'd be saying to them time and time again, is to alleviate it and just enjoy the time.
Is that the kind of messages, I mean, you mentioned your own title runs there, Phil, of which there were many. Is that the sort of message you would have got from, I mean, Shankly, more so Paisley, obviously, in your time? Yeah,
Shankly, Paisley, it was the same thing, more with Bob. It was go for it again. We didn't rest on our laurels at all. It was there. You've done it once, and that's why I think people are fearful of Liverpool. People don't want to see Liverpool, and maybe Johnny Giles has got a little bit of that, because he played at that particular time when Liverpool were kings, and it was a lot of people don't want to see us being like, oh, nice, Liverpool played a nice way and they do things the right way, but to fear them is that cycle that always comes round, and it could be Liverpool's time again. And it's embrace the time. These players could do something special. 29 years, and if they bring it, and that's huge pressure for those lads. But when you get in there and you're doing it and you're doing it right, you have to have the good backroom staff to just get the right words and have trust in your players. Get the players to trust in you of what you're saying is right. And I think all this can help Liverpool in these last 14 games. Last 14 games, my goodness. We're talking like there's about 5 or 6 to go and there's 14 games to go.
Is this the best Liverpool team of the last 29 years, Phil?
The best Liverpool team in the last 29 years. Possibly. You know, you look at the other teams, they've all had different things. I suppose this is near as damn it. Probably not as good as midfield as what some of them had. Steven Gerrard, Xabi Alonso. But the offensive lineup, are they as good as Suarez, Sturridge and Sterling at the time? Probably I'd have to say yes. The defence is better than it's been for years. If Brendan Rodgers had this defence, Brendan Rodgers would have won the league by 10 points. So there's a little bit of difference. So it is possibly the best that can produce a title-winning run.
It obviously all kicks on to London on Monday night, Phil, West Ham, and sort of, I suppose, casting some of that pressure behind it. Like, the evidence almost of the nervousness was the lack of creativity, maybe up front. What sort of reaction are you expecting now? I mean, obviously it helps maybe in some ways that they're not at home on Monday night.
I think that's the big thing, and I think I heard you talking before about sort of defensive strategies and teams behind the ball, making it difficult for people to sort of, you know, for you to play and how to break down pack defences. You're going to West Ham. West Ham fans are going to expect their team to attack. And I think looking at the West Ham side, they're not set up to sort of sit back. Their defensive players are not really get behind the ball or high press. So there will be a little bit in. I think this will give Liverpool, in the vast open spaces of the London Stadium, plenty of room to work to and to counter-attack what they really do well. So playing against West Ham on Monday night might just be a little bit in Liverpool's favour. Because you never see West Ham sort of having packed defences and getting everybody behind the ball the way you've seen Leicester do and the way you see Burnley do, the way you see Newcastle did against Manchester City. So that might help Liverpool a bit on Monday night. I do expect that.
Yeah, although a lot of teams might have looked at what Leicester City were doing and thinking, actually, this is the way to play them. City Arsenal on Sunday. Phil, this is a game that will be live and off the ball. Your old colleague Mark Lawrenson will be there for us alongside Nathan. And it just struck me maybe in some ways that in the same way that Liverpool have a brand new set of circumstances to deal with in terms of the pressure that's mounting there, in some ways, conversely, City might be looking at that and thinking, actually, if we can drive it home against Arsenal on Sunday and heap the pressure back on, it's also a slightly different set of circumstances, but maybe more positive from a City perspective.
Yeah, it is. City will know that, and it's one of the bigger games against the top six. So City will be setting up. They were poor on Tuesday night by their standards, and no more so than just looking at the face of Pep Guardiola. I was doing it for the Sky Soccer special, and they kept on cutting to Pep, and for the first time it looked as though he didn't either have the answers or he was looking and thought his players aren't listening, because he just kept sitting there holding his head the way he does, and he's going, oh my goodness, what's going on in front of me? He scored after 24 seconds. You thought that would open the floodgates, but the passing was so slow. They were moving it slowly, which was allowing Newcastle to get back, and he created only a few chances, which will have really disappointed them for so much possession. And it brings its own problems. And that's what I was saying to you earlier about the both teams, Liverpool and Manchester City, scoring early. But it brings its own pressure on. And Manchester City looked as though they choked a little bit later on. For once, teams who got an opportunity took those chances against Manchester City, and they didn't look comfortable. They didn't have answers, which is very, very unusual. So they'll have to respond against Arsenal. It's got the makings of a great game, but I don't think Arsenal are defensively sound to actually sort of to keep Manchester City out. I really don't. On the other hand, I think the attack of Arsenal could cause problems. Danilo, for my money, is not good enough at left back. Absolutely. He'd be a weak link, and I would target him in the game if you were Arsenal defence.
And just finally, that squeaky bum time that we've been speaking about, Liverpool to overcome that and get it done. Phil, I presume, in your thoughts overall?
I do. I think Liverpool can do it this year. I think listen, it's going to be tight, but the end of January, Liverpool 5 points clear. Goal difference quite even. I would think you're not going to get a better chance, and I think Liverpool can do it this year.
All right,
I said at the start of the season, I said that Liverpool can win the title this year, but if they don't win the title this year, it will definitely be next year, because that's where they're gearing up. City's players will be a year older, but I think Liverpool can do it this year.
Phil, thanks a million.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks a lot. Phil Thompson on the line there, looking ahead to the weekend's football, primarily, obviously, Liverpool, and somewhat confident that they're going to get it done. It's definitely a different set of circumstances. It was just such an odd game during the week. Both games were so odd. I definitely felt that, having looked at that City match, that it would inspire Liverpool, because Liverpool never struck me as that team who could have the potential to freeze up, particularly, as he points out, there's still so many bloody games to go.
I think every team has that potential to freeze up when you're up
this far from the finish line is, I suppose, the only caveat.
It's just been did they open up a lead too early almost? Like the Ireland football team scoring too early. Did Liverpool get that bit of luck that they needed from Manchester City dropping points around Christmas? Was Christmas just too soon? Because there has been a bit of tension seeping in. I don't think it's to do with tension, to be honest with you. I think it's to do with the idea that every Premier League team goes through a horrible patch at some point or another. And I think we're actually witnessing the Liverpool patch where they're struggling right now. They haven't really won a game comprehensively since Arsenal last month. That they've actually got through this period, and they've lost to Manchester City, of course. They got knocked out of the FA Cup. But they're two blows that they could probably ship. They didn't lose midweek, and they extended their lead at the top of the table. I think things are looking pretty good from Liverpool's perspective still. It's like the wheel will turn back around in terms of Liverpool form.
Just think that it might get inside their head as well, right? Because it might just be a shitty patch. That in the grand scheme of things is only that, whereas it's being ascribed now to other more sort of significant issues about their incapacity to get over the finish line. And ultimately, at some point, that gets into your head. And
well, if there's anybody who's got inside their own head, it's Manchester City asking Kyle Walker to remove that brilliant Harry Maguire tweet the other night. I don't know whose idea that was. Was it?
What was it?
Pep's? So you know the meme of Harry Maguire leaning over the railing talking to his girlfriend after the World Cup game during the summer, and Kyle Walker posted that photo with the caption. So basically, they thought they were going to go 7 points ahead. ... Which was brilliant, and obviously Pep or somebody told them to take it down. So if somebody's inside their own head,
they're crapping themselves.
A little bit. The big thing to look out for this weekend is Maurizio Sarri going to be Chelsea manager come Monday morning? Yeah. Like, they're at home to Huddersfield. They should win, but I'm wondering, are Huddersfield about to ride a new manager wave? Who knows?
Sarri seems to be the hardest word on.
Can we just gloss over that one?
We brought you some clips. Darren Cleary is standing by to bring you up to speed with all the latest sports news. We brought you some clips from our charity match for the Irish Heart Foundation on Monday last. Kevin Kilbane is not a happy man.
Just after I got my 1 out of 10 at the time.
Was it? Yeah.
So I couldn't accept that.
I saw one from Adrian Barry. I mean, the performance from Adrian Barry the other night showed exactly why I made a scathing attack on him on that Monday.
Why?
Because it was as bad his performance as I suggested on Monday when I was on the show.
Wow.
Talking about it, yeah. I can't play though, can he?
He's not a football man. Do you know what? And this is...
I don't know what happened to that video, right? But I have to say, cutting that dickhead off in his prime as he was about to get stuck into me, who got, I think the official player ratings were done by the managers as far as I know. So John Giles gave me a 7 out of 10, and Kevin Kilbane, who got like a 1 or 2 out of 10, and Nathan Murphy, who, as the commentator, the best commentator of the game, pointed out, I made look like an absolute idiot. Having some sort of a pop off me, how dare he? How absolute dare he?
Did the managers actually do the play ratings?
Absolutely. John Giles gave me a 7 out of 10 on.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's exactly what happened there. And I'll hear nothing else. I don't want to know.
That sounds like a really stupid player rating.
Another theory, Darren. I mean, as far as I know, that's exactly what happened.
That player rating.
Well, John Giles lifted the veil yesterday because he threw us all under the bus when he distanced himself from the player ratings. When Nathan had a moan to Gilesy last night and said, "John, I got a 1 out of 10. Can you believe that? That's scandalous." Nathan, I can't believe that. That's terrible.
Well, having written them himself. But yeah, I mean, and the best thing Kevin Kilbane did was almost not show up, because it turns out when he did show up, he was absolutely brutal.
He was lucky he got a game. Brian Kerr was strongly considering him keeping him on the bench.
He should have stayed there. He hardly got a touch all game. He was terrible.
Well,
touch like a trampoline.
His only, I suppose, introduction in the game was not very well, and then when he actually went in goal, it was even worse, because the only influence he had was when he messed up for the goal.
Yeah.
He gave the ball to young Owen McMahon.
I'm with you, Darren. What have you got for us? You're going to kick us off with the rugby?
Well, a feast of rugby, Adrian. The Six Nations is upon us. The toughest possible start awaits Ireland tomorrow. England.
Oh, here we go. Hang about, Darren. Right, so here we go. Ball's fed out to the left. That's Johnny Ward. A little bit of touch there. Quite defensive football, you think you'll find there from the Dubs in white. So they've a bit of a pop here. It's all leading into one, I think, move of the match. I think it was just, here's Kilbane. Now, look, loses the ball again. Typical Kilbane. So Murphy gets he's more comfortable with his hands on the ball, to be fair, Murphy, than at his feet. I have a little bit of a go. So look at number 7 here. That's me looking for the ball all the time. Look at this. Gets the ball. He realises Murphy's on the shoulder. Oh! Is that a Cruyff turn? Let's not worry about what happened after that.
You gave the ball away after that.
Well, actually, I mean, I think that Joe Conroy was shown for the ball and then suddenly disappeared. So I mean, that's
there wasn't enough meat on it.
Joe under the bus here.
I'm looking forward to the BuzzFeed list where it's like 12 times presenters got extremely self-indulgent, and that being number 1 on that list.
You have to have a pop back on. I've just been slandered for the last 2 weeks. Slandered across all off-the-ball platforms. Started with Malloy, Kilbane and McCormick one night having an absolute pop off me.
They just literally laughed out loud.
John Giles was going to sort of laugh his boots off at my quality. I get a 7 out of 10. I do a Cruyff turn. I hit the bar. Should have scored with the follow-up. I mean, a lot of people were saying I was player of the match. That's all I'm saying. Well, I mean, if you say that's a presenter being self-indulgent, that's on you.
And do you feel you've got your revenge now? Do you feel that you've vindicated?
Cold.
It's like Kerry in 2009 going through the back door. That's you right now. You know the feeling.
Oh, straight through the front door with that Cruyff turn on.
Well, that's true. It would have been better if you not make them. But
Darren, a bit like Nathan there. I cut you off in your prime. what have you got?
Well, the Six Nations is upon us. The toughest possible start awaits Ireland tomorrow at the Aviva Stadium. England visit there. The full heat of the bitter rivalry felt this week. The English described Joe Schmidt's game plan as dull. One coach claimed Ireland would be bored into submission by playing against them. It may be left to Schmidt and his players to teach the English some respect.
It's just people have different approaches. I think it's incredibly important to respect your opponents. I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge what abilities they bring to the game, and I don't think for a moment that it's going to be boring. I think it's going to be incredibly exhilarating. I think it's going to be edge of the seat, because I don't think there's going to be a huge amount between the two teams. And so, I do think people are going to be entertained. And one of the great things about being in the Aviva Stadium is the entertainment is partially provided by those outside the pitch supporting the team in the manner that they do. The players feed off that excitement, and it's almost reciprocated by the crowd. And we know we're going to have a big crowd in, and we know that they're going to be incredibly supportive and at the same time respectful.
To be fair to Eddie Jones, and I mean, there's not a lot of reasons to be unfair to him. I don't think he was saying the games would be boring.
Ireland's approach.
Eddie Jones never said anything about being boring.
It was Mitchell.
Well, I know, but we don't think that John Mitchell went off in a solo run, do we?
Potentially. I think there's
no chance.
Well, as Alan Quinlan described on the show the other day, there's every chance that John Mitchell went off on a solo run, given a pass that's he's been fairly erratic at times.
I think what happened was John Mitchell was walking into that press room, and Eddie Jones went up to him and said, "John, here's a little grenade, right? When you're in the middle of that, just pop the pin in it and lob it on in." Like, it's consistent. It could easily, the words that he used could easily have been Eddie Jones.
We're just giving Eddie Jones way too much credit. There's this belief that he's this master manipulator and he gets the message out in a way that will, at some stage, somehow benefit England. I don't think he's that clever. I think he's just asked questions, and unfortunately for Eddie Jones, he answers them with the first thing that comes to his head. Which just tends to rile up Schmidt. The best line Schmidt had yesterday was when he said, what Eddie Jones says isn't really relevant to me and how I prepare my team, which was the best burn of the week. Now, the toughest challenge possible also awaits the Ireland women's team, because England visit Energia Park. There are 3 uncapped players named among the subs for Ireland. Linda Zhugang, Anne-Marie O'Hara and Catherine Dane will be hoping to get their first international run out from the bench. Aoife McDermott is happy to face the best side in the Six Nations in the first game.
Look, I really look forward to it. You're going to have to play them at some stage, so why not first up and hopefully get us a really strong performance and set us up well for the rest of the campaign. We're under no illusions. It's going to be a very tough game Friday night, but we're up for it. We're ready for it. We have I think Adam Griggs has picked his strongest side, and we're ready to go in all guns blazing.
And I suppose you have to be very familiar with them. Played them last year at Twickenham in the Six Nations, played a November International against them as well. With maybe the pool of teams that you play in exhibition games being quite shallow, you're probably used to playing these teams, so I'm sure you know an awful lot about England. Yeah,
exactly, and that's an advantage. They can say the same, that they know a bit about us, but we'll definitely be trying to use that to our advantage. We gained a huge amount of experience playing them in November, and we got a really strong performance in there, scored I think 3 tries against them, so we'll be looking to definitely build and improve on that.
Now, there's extensive build-up to that game over on the Off the Ball YouTube channel. Will O'Callaghan was speaking to the players and the head coach Adam Griggs this week. It's been a great day so far for the Ireland team at the World Rugby Women's Sevens Series. They're into the quarterfinals in Sydney after going unbeaten in the pool stage. Ireland started with a 7-7 draw with Russia, then edged Canada 15-14. That result made all the more impressive as they came from 14-0 down to record only a second ever win over the Canadians. That victory followed by a 22-19 win over Fiji. They finished top of Pool B. The quarterfinals are tomorrow. The Ireland under-20s face England from 7:15. Head coach Noel McNamara's starting team is made up of 7 Leinster, 6 Munster and 2 Connacht players. 1 Ulster player has made the subs. In the front row, props Josh Wycherley and Thomas Clarkson will start alongside hooker Dylan Tierney-Martin. Charlie Ryan is in the second row with Niall Murray. Martin Maloney, Scott Penny and John Hodnott are named in the back row. Scrum half Craig Casey partners out half Harry Byrne. Captain David Hawkshaw alongside Liam Turner in the centre. Jake Flannery starts at full back with Conor Phillips and Jonathan Wren lining out on the wings. Now in Gaelic games, Clare's Tony Kelly will have to watch his side face Kilkenny from the stands this Sunday after his 1-match ban was upheld. He failed in an appeal to have the red card dished out against Tip rescinded. The 2013 Hurler of the Year sent off early in the second half after a collision with Paddy Marr. Premier League clubs spent £180 million during the January transfer window, the first time the figure has fallen since 2012. Chelsea's £55 million spent for Christian Pulisic from Borussia Dortmund accounted for nearly a third of the total expenditure. Last year's winter transfer window saw top-flight clubs shell out £430 million. The £180 million transfer bill this time round is total gross spending by Premier League clubs for the 2018-19 season, estimated now to be about £1.4 billion, the second highest season ever, following the record spend of 17-18, which was £1.9 billion. Now, there was plenty of Irish interest as well on deadline day. Some moves to tell you about. Republic of Ireland midfielder David Myler has dropped down a division in search of regular first-team football. He's gone from Reading. He's moved to League One Coventry. He's there on loan until the end of the season. He made just 5 league appearances for Reading since his summer move from Hull. Aaron Connolly had a busy deadline day. He signed a contract extension at Brighton and then was immediately loaned out to Luton Town, who are the League One leaders. Graham Burke is gone from Preston. The League One strugglers Gillingham has joined him. He's there on loan until the end of the season. While Scott Hogan has departed Aston Villa, he's moved to Sheffield United on loan until the end of the season.
That it?
That is us.
Good stuff, Darren. Thanks a million for that. The Dubs get back on track this weekend, I'm assuming is...
Well, we're in a bit of a depression at the moment. 2 losses back-to-back is as bad as I can remember it. I don't really know what to do. I'm starting to quake in my boots.
Really?
No.
No. Couldn't give a shite about the league, is that the...
No, I'd like to be competitive in the league. I think Dublin, this is probably the latest they've ever started a year under Jim Gavin. I'm not sure why it worked out. Even the year the All-Ireland final replayed, they were back earlier and doing competitive training, but most of that team were on holidays 10 days before the Monaghan game. They'd only had 2 sessions as a group on the pitch, so I wasn't really expecting too much out of Monaghan. I'm not so sure the expectations would be too high this weekend. You would hope that it would be an improvement. They were in a really good place to actually win the Monaghan game, to be 6 points up at one stage during the first half, considering how little football that group had played. They did pretty well last weekend despite the losing.
Yeah, all right, we'll see how it pans out over the next while. Darren, thanks a million as always.
Cheers,
to Studio Fair Play. By the way, just a reminder that you can listen to hashtag OTB AM every morning. You can check that out over on offtheball.com if you're not in a good Wi-Fi area. Always a handy way to keep across the show. You just click on the player in the top right hand corner of our brand new website. You can minimise it and go about your daily routine as much as you want, so check that out. It's up on offtheball.com. So it's to rugby. We turn, just coming up on 10 to 9 on this cold Friday morning. We are delighted to have you along with us, and plenty of comments coming in as well, including for Alan Quinlan and Mike Tindall, who are going to be joining us shortly to preview the Ireland-England game. So keep those comments coming in and we'll bring them to the 2 lads. But the rumours started early in the week that Robbie Henshaw could be starting at 15 for Ireland. It was confirmed yesterday afternoon by Joe Schmidt. And here's the Irish Independent's Rory O'Connor on Henshaw's credentials at 15.
So in 2017 he lost, he pretty much knew he was losing Jarrah Payne to retirement, and he knew that Simon Zebo was gone to France and was thus ruling himself out of the equation. And while Rob Kearney has been an unbelievable servant who always delivers for Ireland, he wasn't sure what he had underneath that in terms of full-back options. Now he has good players. He's Jordan Larmour, who's come through in the last year. He's Will Addison, who primarily plays at centre for Ulster, but is able to cover full-back well. He's Andrew Conway, again, plays mostly on the wing for Munster, but is an accomplished full-back. So he doesn't get many opportunities to try it, and he tried. I think he put Henshaw on the bench against Fiji in 2017 November, and the way the game went, he couldn't bring him on there. Joey Carberry got injured. They needed to win the game. He put him on in the centre. There was some talk that during the November internationals he was going to get a run there as well, but he pulled his hamstring. And I guess at this stage you've got 5 games in the Six Nations that are competitive until the World Cup, because the World Cup warm-up games are warm-ups and they're not, you know, they will be mixed and matching, but it doesn't count for much. And Joe Schmidt is in his final year. He's won the Grand Slam. He's won 2 Six Nations apart from that Grand Slam, 3 in total. So while he wants to win this and spring into the World Cup from this, he at the same time probably doesn't have the pressure on him from the IRFU perspective about winning it, that he's not going to throw it by any means. And I don't think this decision means he's going to throw it, but I think he's got a little bit of freedom in which to experiment, and this is a huge experiment to put in, because for all that Kearney has played very little rugby, Henshaw's played less since November.
That hasn't been actually made much of a point of it all.
Yeah, so Henshaw came back, played 60 minutes for Leinster against Wasps, played really, really well, and is the kind of player who generally comes back and hits the ground running. But he's had an injury hit year. He's clearly able to do it at a certain level, and I believe that he will be able to do it on Saturday. I think he is more than capable of stepping up to the mark. He's a really accomplished rugby player in every part of the game.
but we've never seen him. He's won one cap at Ireland for Ireland in the full-back role. That was in 2013. His debut was a 19-year-old against the United States. I was there over in Houston. It didn't go particularly well for him, but then, you know, he was a teenager making his debut, so it's pretty irrelevant now. So it's a massive decision.
Rory O'Connor on Wednesday Night Rugby with Johnny Ward during the week. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian.
How's the form?
Very good, no. Yeah,
You're
looking
not,
forward to the weekend.
I was sort of looking at the lineup for the Legends game, expecting to see the big man packing down.
No, I'm doing France, commentary for France v Wales tonight on Virgin Media.
Are you happy about that? Do you play at all anymore?
No, I played that game 2 years ago, and that's it. The boots are gone.
It's not really the sort of thing you can. It's not like a five-a-side you can sort of tip away at when you're done.
Most of the guys are kind of do a little bit of training anyway, but I would have played if I wasn't doing France Wales tonight. It's good crack.
Yeah, for good cause as well, so people can pick up tickets. I think it's available on the gate and at the RDS, so get yourselves down there for some great causes, obviously. The big talking point, obviously, that we'll get to, but Henshaw in a few minutes' time. It does feel, Quinny, though, a lot of the conversations that we're having about the Six Nations upcoming are all in the kind of context of Rugby World Cup. It's in a way that I can't quite remember it being that way before. I presume that our expectations of ourselves are so high that, and because we've been so successful in the Six Nations over the last few years, it's not that we're not worried about it, but everything is kind of, you know, is this a team that's going to start in the World Cup? It's all in the World Cup context, really.
Yeah, it is, and it's the first time that we've on the back of a Grand Slam. I know we won it in 2009, but then there was, 2 years to the World Cup. Essentially, this one there's extra pressure given what happened in November, being second in the world. People are saying, it's the World Cup that counts, but I think Six Nations titles are very, very important as well. And any of the players who'll be in the squad and involved, given the depth and the quality of players that are there now, there's so many options in so many different positions that they won't be slackening off any little bit. And I suppose it's the perception of the tournament now. Is it more important than the World Cup? No, the World Cup is probably the bigger thing at the end of the year. But I think for this team to continue building momentum and to try and win a championship again, you've got to deal in the here and now, you know what I mean, and not kind of forfeit success for potential success down the road. But so it is massive. I think at the end of it, when you look back, people will say if it didn't go great for Ireland, if they lost a game or two, well, it doesn't really matter. It won't have a psychological damaging effect on them, I don't think, unless they completely capitulate, which is not going to happen.
Do you think that, so like we've been discussing the whole Liverpool scenario and the little bit of a blip they had during the week and the impact that, regardless of how it came about, right, whether they froze because they went inside of the line or whether, like Owen was saying, maybe they just had a bit of an off day, regardless of how it came about, it'll take on a greater significance. And that's maybe the only concern from an Irish point of view going into the Six Nations, that, like Owen was saying, maybe the Scotland game is the most important one, but if there is a blip somewhere along the line, suddenly Ireland start to question themselves in a way that maybe they hadn't done before.
Potentially, I think dealing with pressure, and no matter how many times you speak about it, and I remember Ireland go to Murrayfield 2 years ago and genuinely spoke about the threats, and Scotland were coming good and they were going to be very dangerous, and you try and get everything right as a player and as coaches, and some things just don't go your way on the day, and the opposition play that little bit better. And we've seen so many times in sporting events where the better team doesn't always win, or the favourites don't win, and they freeze in the day, something goes wrong, a big decision goes against them, and Ireland have to deal with all that kind of stuff now, and signing good teams is coping with that. And sometimes you have a blip, and that pressure does tell, even though Joe Schmidt and his team and his coaches, they'll be, for the last few months since November, they'll be preparing for this and trying to get the minds right and monitoring and talking to players. So you can't overemphasize it too much, because then you're you're staying in a negative zone about the what ifs, and this could happen and that could go wrong. You don't do that. I think you just got to try and the challenge is to try and focus on what they're doing well and what they have to do in the game, and understand the threat of a big physical English side. And rugby is a game of small margins. It can change very quickly. You can put a weaker team out in the field, a perceived weaker team against a stronger team, and if they're physically more dominant, they can win the game, and they can win the collisions, and they can, you know, kick the leather off the ball and play in the opposition half and just force the more talented team into making mistakes. I'm not saying there's any difference with talent tomorrow. I think Ireland are in a more confident place as regards their form. But this English side that Eddie Jones has picked is an incredibly powerful side who could easily challenge for the Six Nations. They could get a win tomorrow and they could be going for Grand Slams and stuff, you know. So they've to go to Cardiff as well. It's a bit trickier for them. But they've 3 games at home, so effectively, in my opinion, it's kind of a mini championship decider. First up, Wales, France tonight. If Wales were to get a win in Paris, they're on a roll. And you know, if Scotland were to beat Ireland next week, you know, they'd be 2 from 2 because they'll beat Italy tomorrow. So a lot can happen in the Six Nations, and historically, we've been a little bit slow out of the blocks. I hope we're quicker out of the blocks. And Joe Schmidt said that during the week. This is a game that just ignites you, focuses you, and you know, dealing with that extra little bit of pressure will be intriguing to see, because invariably for any team, you're going to have an off day, or the opposition are going to have the purple patch. So their discipline needs to be good tomorrow, and they need to, you know, play to their strengths. And you know, I think John Mitchell was talking about Ireland being boring at the start of the week. Last year, they scored the most tries in the Six Nations and they were the most dominant team. They were a little bit slow, particularly in that first game in Paris, where France unsettled them a bit and frustrated Ireland at the breakdown and stuff. So they'll probably have to deal with pressure from England tomorrow, a different type of physical pressure, similar to New Zealand, I think, and they coped really well there.
It seems, like you say there, Ireland aren't likely to capitulate. It seems that if you want any coach in the world to be in charge of your team when you're favourites for a game, it is Joe Schmidt.
Yeah, I think so. He'll try and keep them grounded, and you know, look, people always say, you know, when a team that's probably favourites to win lose, or they took their eye off the ball, or they didn't.
That won't happen.
No, they won't. Good teams and top teams, top professional sides, don't take their eye off the ball. Sometimes the opposition just come with an extra bit of energy or enthusiasm or aggression. And they win the 50-50 collisions, because tomorrow's 50-50. A lot of the stuff, I think we probably have a little edge now. Before the game, at the breakdown with O'Mahony and Van der Fleer and Standard, are very good at the poach. Mark Wilson, Vunipola and Tom Curry are probably not as dominant at the breakdown. Tom Curry is a super player, to be fair, to number 7. He's very effective at the breakdown, very similar to Van der Fleer. Full of energy and pace around the field. He's still only 20, it's phenomenal. I just think a 20-year-old playing international test match rugby as a 7. In that position, who played tests in South Africa a few months ago, so it's phenomenal, but they won't underestimate him. Yeah, Joe will keep him focused, and I think he has said it, and sometimes you say it's coaches speak. You've got to focus on your strengths and make sure you implement your game plan. Of course, the individual players will watch videos and want their opposition, and collectively Andy Farrell will have presented, Simon Easter will present videos about their lineouts, all that kind of stuff. The attack, Joe will have showed there a lot of the stuff, and you have to be conscious of that stuff, and then try and pick holes and find ways of. And some games, essentially, you have to just roll up the sleeves and say, well, it might be a bit of a slugfest, and there may be 3-6 points in it from penalty goals or drop goals. It was interesting, I was chatting to Clive Woodward a little while ago, and this morning for breakfast radio, and he seems to think that England, if they can get the scoreboard ticking over with an early penalty, maybe a drop goal or 2, that they'll settle and that they'll be happy with a bit of a slugfest as well. So you might get 2 teams cancelling each other out, or we may see.
Yeah. Well, they won't care if it's boring and they get.
No, nobody will care.
The one thing that strikes me is it's not a fantastic stretch of the imagination to suggest that this 15 that starts tomorrow could actually be our first pick 15 come the World Cup. Like Van der Fleer possibly might be the one that you may sort of switch in and out, but that notwithstanding, that the rest of them, that might be the shape of it.
Yeah, it's very close to it. Anyway, you'd imagine that all the big names are in there. There's still a fair few guys chomping at the bit there and trying to force people off that team. And I think he's in a position now, Joe, that he can make changes. You look at someone like the 2 players, Henderson and Byrne. You could easily start either of those in the second row.
Is it the 15 that will start the World Cup, do you think?
I don't know. I think it'll be close to it. If players dip in form, the back row is an area where it could change very, very quickly. You know, Levy was outstanding last year in the Six Nations and for Leinster. Van der Fleer is you know, he's been sensational since he's, you know, you think back 12 months ago, he damaged his cruciate. He was the starting 7 in Paris. How can all flip around so quickly? He was out for a long period. Jack Conan will certainly not want to buy into the perception that CJ Stander is there to stay for the next couple of years, even though Standers has been, you know, so consistent in his performance. So the coaches will want that kind of hunger and desire. Rhys Ruddock, Jordy Murphy, you know, there's a fair few guys in the back row, loose forwards there, can challenge and maybe make change. You think Will Addison is someone who could potentially, Andrew Conway, you know, Rob Kearney's not going to be pleased, is he, losing out as full back? And so there's a number of guys there, and the whole idea is to have more depth at the World Cup and maybe change.
On that point, is it surprising in some ways that I know that it seems as if it was the intention to have played Henshaw at 15 during the Novembers at some point, but he obviously picked up that injury and it didn't get to happen. I think it might have been Gavin Cumiskey that had written that during the week. So I understand that it's not just in a World Cup year that he wanted to play him there, that there was a little bit of a gap before that. But it does strike me as the one position where, when we talk about the possible replacements, which we've done over the last few weeks, that actually we're not as well stacked with specialists as we are for almost every other
there's not, because Larmer can play there, Carberry, Will Addison can play there, Rob Kearney obviously is the one who's been there for a long time and been brilliant.
Does it matter that we don't have those specialists? Is that just something that, from all of us looking in, sort of?
It's, ideally, you'd have specialists, guys in the 4 provinces, 4 Irish qualified players playing 15 kind of week in, week out for the big games, and that are natural full-backs. So, you know, I remember watching Robbie Henshaw when he started out with Connacht, playing as a full-back and being incredibly dangerous, hitting the line, and he's a wonderful footballer. The only difference about playing as a fullback, and I spoke to Johnny Lacey, who's the international referee at the moment. He played with Munster and he played with Shannon for me for years, and Johnny was a brilliant fullback in my opinion, and he achieved a fair bit. And I just kind of asked him, and he's obviously a player development coach as well, so he's very, very much into the intricacies of playing as a fullback and being a skills coach. And he's, you know, I was asking what's different about fullback. Well, you can put very good footballers at full-back, but you still need to have a kind of a cool mind and a visual excellence for not where the ball is landing, but where you think it's going to land, if that makes sense, Adrian. You know, so obviously when the ball is at the base of a ruck, you can see full-backs, they're shimmering a little bit and they're anticipating whether the 9 is going to box kick or kick long, but they're also kind of anticipating if the 10 gets it, is he going right? Is he going left? If centres have it, are they going to put grubbers through to try and you know, get wingers to free up the winger chasing onto the ball? So it's all about anticipation, and it's not just the full back; it's the back 3. So Stockdale and Earls will be very important in their communication, in how they kind of sweep over and back and cover. And sometimes the full back is the last. He's the last man. He's the last tackler. You know, the winger comes in and the full back is usually the person that you want making that last tackle, and you need him sweeping across. So they'll have worked a lot on that. He's a very intelligent player, Robbie Henshaw. He's an incredible footballer. You know, if there was a Lions team being picked in the morning, Henshaw would be in the mix.
What position?
Well, he's definitely going to. You know what? If he'd be in a stronger position now if he performs well as a full back, because you're saying he can play loads of different positions. But Robbie Henshaw's a guy you can put on the wing. He can play 12, 13, 14, 15. It's tough on Rob Kearney, but I think the reason it's happened is obviously because of form, and then to try and get an outstanding rugby player on the field as well with Aki and Ringrose.
Joe Schmidt was talking about it in his press conference yesterday about his decision to start Henshaw at 15.
Robbie trained last week. He trained in November, a little bit of fullback, so he actually trained a little bit in Australia, so it's been something that has been an option for us for quite some time, and Rob ran out of time a little bit, and we like the flexibility of Jordan on the bench, covering a number of positions. I thought he came on really well last season against England, coming into 13 and having to play the last 35 minutes. So, yeah, it's one of those things that we've seen as an option for quite some time. So it's probably not as much of a surprise to Robbie or the team as it maybe is to other people.
Yeah, not much of a surprise, but is it still a risk considering his lack of game time at international level?
Yeah, it's probably more risk is lack of game time, full stop. He hasn't actually played that much himself. We got to a situation where we had a few different options there, and really we just felt the way he trained when we were away and the way he's trained this week, that it was worth pursuing.
So clearly, Robbie Henshaw is doing something right at 15 in training, Alan.
Well, excuse me. That's it, and he puts a lot of emphasis on how they train as well, and the training is pretty high intensity, and you know, he's seen stuff, so it's not for us to kind of challenge that. It is a risk, you know, there's no doubt about it. He'll probably understand himself that it is a little bit risky, but he's confident in his ability to do the job there, and I think there's a similar situation maybe a little bit with England, with Elliot Daly at fullback. He's not a natural fullback. I think wing is probably his specialist position as well, and Eddie Jones pushed him in there last year, and he wasn't successful there. When you think of maybe Mike Brown, he's probably similar to Rob Kearney, isn't he? Maybe with just absolute security and.
But Daly's more of a risk than Henshaw, isn't it? Is it? Do you like just because of the way Ireland play and because of the balls that he's
Daly he's played there in recent Test matches, so it's probably not. We haven't seen Robbie Henshaw there.
Schmidt avoided the question when he was asked, "Is it a risk playing at 15?" He said, "Well, it's a risk playing at all because he hasn't played very much," and totally avoided the question about his specifically at 15. So clearly, I mean, to me, that says that.
I think he'll be successful.
Why wouldn't you be a little bit concerned?
I think he'll be successful. Like I said, just some of that positional stuff. And we mightn't even notice that. The layperson mightn't even notice that. It's just being a yard ahead of where the ball is.
Is he in Rob? I mean, I don't know, right? But is he in Rob Kearney's ear this week, going, "Listen, give me what you got, Henshaw"?
Yeah, look, I think he'll be very, very disappointed. Rob Kearney. He's a very competitive person, and he's had a few, you know, small setbacks before. He's had a few injuries, but he's been probably our most decorated player with the success he's had. I don't think he'll be kind of willingly going up and saying do this, this and this, because it's not natural, and I don't think Robbie Henshaw will be looking for it. But if the advice is asked for, I'm sure it'll be given. You know, they're close, they're teammates in Leinster, and they'd be close to each other. But look, he's got to dust himself down now, Rob Kearney, and the wheel can turn very, very quickly. You know, there was talk before the November series that after Jordan Larmour's performance against Italy that he'd start against the All Blacks, but you know, they went back to Rob Kearney, and he's never let the side down, and I sense that it could happen again. You know, it may happen again. There might be a reshuffle in the centre for Scotland, who knows, but it's tough on him, but he's got to deal with it this week now. Just on
Elliot Daly, we might put this point to Mike Tindall, but Austin Healy is saying in the Telegraph this morning that there might be a situation where Billy Vunipola just drops back behind Daly during Conor Murray's box kicks, because if you catch cleanly Conor Murray's box kick, then you're in trouble as well in terms of penalties, etc., etc. So what do you think? Is that something
a lot of teams can do that? They drop a back row, a 6 or an 8 back to, you know, in the backfield to maybe catch and carry, or if the winger or full-back catches it, that they have an option to pass, or they're the first person to clean out that breakdown to help him. So yeah, it's something that could happen. The execution is vital here, that the kick is not too deep and it's contestable, and if it's contestable, then it's very effective, you know. So they could well drop someone backfield, yes.
A few comments coming in. Michael Duffy, come on Ireland, what a team and squad that they're incredible. The Dubs and Irish rugby have set the bar high. You having that?
They sure have. The Dubs have. I'm a fan of the Dubs, even though I'm a tip man. Yeah, but the bar, when you're on that high, it's a challenge to keep it going, isn't it? This is a bit different than. This is a bit more evenly matched, shall I say, than the Dubs, because they're incredible side and more. And
it's like Dublin versus Kerry, is what you're saying.
Really strong favourites when they play.
The top two favourites for the All-Ireland.
Typical Kenny in the hurling, more like.
Genuinely, there's four. I know I'll confuse people if I start going into the matches and the what ifs, but you know, Wales, if they win in Paris tonight, they're on a run. They're on a roll. They're up front first. They've got England in Cardiff, they'll fancy that. They've got Ireland in Cardiff. They're going to beat Italy, and then they've Scotland in Murrayfield, you know. So they like, if they get on a roll, they're all what ifs. Scotland themselves, like I say, if they beat Ireland next week, they do have two tricky ones away, but they've won in Paris before, and they've got to go to Twickenham. So it's very evenly matched, and I think there'll be a few ups and downs in this tournament. France, who knows what they'll be like.
Yeah. We did mention at the top, and a reminder again that there's a brilliant game on the RDS tonight if you want to get yourselves along. Tickets still available and will be available on the gate. Ireland against England Legends. We'll see the likes of Gordon Darcy, Big Mal O'Kelly, Shane Byrne, Josh Lucy is going to be there, Mike Tindall as well. They're all playing each other for a number of rugby charities, including the Doddy Weir My Name is Doddy Foundation. So do get along there. Also available at ticketmaster.ie. €15 on general sale, and €10 for students. I'm glad to say that one of those legends that I mentioned joins us on the line now. Mike Tindall, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are we?
Very good. What sort of shape are you in for? We've just been chatting to Alan Quinlan here, who's in studio with us, about what sort of... He's balked at the game tonight, Mike, needless to say, but what sort of shape do you keep yourself in?
Try to do the best, but every year it gets a little bit worse. You know, it's just the way of the world. But yeah, I think to be able to get the teams that we get together each year to play this game and raise the money that we do for the charities charities that change, and obviously with it being Doddy this year, he's a huge character within the game, and I think it's just a way of the guys just rallying around people that they need to support, and it shows that everyone in the game will fight for each other, and even though you'll go to war on the field, off it you've all got each other's back, and I think that's the amazing thing about our sport.
Yeah, it's for a really great cause, and people should get themselves along there this evening. I was having a look when we knew you were coming on at your record against Ireland. Mike, do you know what it is off the top of your head?
It was probably very good at the start, and then tailed off towards the end. I don't know. I have no idea. Exactly.
You went 3-0 in your first three, including your debut against Ireland at Twickenham, I think.
Yeah.
Against you had one Brian O'Driscoll, who was also making his Six Nations debut at that time, and then it went 3-3 when Ireland hit that purple patch. But you saw it out in the end. You have a 4-3 win-loss ratio in your favour against Ireland.
I do. Yeah, the Croke Park years were very bad to us. We never won that, so they were very bad. But yeah, we did. So probably won all home games and lost one away game, and then lost.
I think that was it.
3 away games. It would have been. Yeah,
I think that was it. Yeah. So look at it. Probably 4-4 after tonight. You know, we'll set the record straight.
Well, we lost 2 years ago. We lost 2 years ago as well. So yeah, we're owed. It'd be good to start the weekend off well with a win and just put the pressure on the main boys to do a job on the Saturday.
Where are England at, Mike? Coming force again, in your opinion, or they obviously had a dodgy start to 2018, but seemed to come right by the end of the year. Where are England at in an overall sense?
Well, it's a very good question. No one really knows. Eddie changes so much. You don't really. I think even yesterday, I didn't really have a clue who was going to play. There's 10 people that you probably knew what was going to happen, and then if T.O. hadn't got injured, and if Brad Shields had come through, if Cochran Senior had come through, you really wouldn't know what he was going to pick, and I don't think that's a great place to be. Going into this year in terms of the Rugby World Cup, but going into an away game against Ireland. So, look, they put in a performance against New Zealand. I think the Japan game was a bit of a joke, and I think they got that wrong in terms of how many changes they made. I just don't think we were in a good enough position to make those changes. But you go into your hardest game first up. Hopefully, both teams, it's going to be who can hit the ground running first. It's going to be interesting to see the style that he's going to play. I would have liked to have seen Manu at 13 and have two ball players at 10 and 12, but you've sort of gone I mean, it gives us a good matchup in Bundy, Aki and Manu, but I think if England go and try and play sort of an attritional, physical, dominant way of playing, I'm not sure that's going to get it done. That's what we've tried to do for the last 3 attempts that we've been in the Aviva, and none of them have worked. I think they need to sort of change things around a little bit, but whether they'll do that, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, just one more on Eddie Jones. He's obviously had lots of interesting stuff to say about us over the last few weeks, actually. It's too late to change now, and it isn't going to change in the lead into the World Cup. But for you, is he the right man to be leading this England team into the Rugby World Cup later this year?
Look, I mean, you can't say he's not, because he walks into the job and he wins 22 out of 23. But since then, the message that has been coming out of the camp has shifted a little bit. In my eyes, it went from making sure that we were playing at an intensity and a speed in the games that other teams can't live with, whereas now all I seem to talk about is how intense the training is. I'm like, well, I don't really care how intense the training is. I want to see that intensity on the field, and I think we've had patches of that. I think the New Zealand game, obviously, the way they started, they blasted out the blocks, and that's what I want to see every week. I don't think we can't do a change now anyway. So he's in there till that World Cup. But I just want him to get back to playing at that, where the ball's given a wee bit more air. You want to see the Vinopolas linking with the backs like they were doing a year and a half ago, which freed up so much space. I want to see forwards doing little tip passes that instead of just running into brick walls. And if they can get that right, I've got no doubt we've got a great team that can go and get a win tomorrow. But the stars have to align, and they have to play at the top of their game, because what this Ireland team has shown is they know how to win a game, whether they play well or whether they play bad. Their game is very ingrained in them, so they're so comfortable, and there's never any panic. And if you don't get your game right, they'll swallow you up.
Mike, it's Alan Quinlan here. Just Eddie Jones this week has said, and yesterday actually said it, that all the pressure is on Ireland. It's a bit different for us as Irish people having that kind of pressure, given the history between the two countries and what England have achieved and stuff like that before. Do you agree with him? If you were in that England changing room tomorrow, would you be kind of using that as a motivating factor, maybe to free yourself up mentally a little bit and say the pressure's on them, the pressure's on them? Is he right in saying that?
I think the pressure is on Ireland just because they're going in favourites, and it's not happened I would imagine for quite a while that Ireland have gone in favourites, and so come favourites. I think so. I think the pressure is. I think from an English perspective, there's still a huge amount of pressure on this team. They're not delivering. Everyone got this cloudy vision of where they were a year ago, and that's sort of just been shattered over the last year. So there's massive pressure on them going into a World Cup year that they're not quite where they thought they were. But as I say, I still believe that we have the players to get back to where we were. But for this game, I think Ireland being favourites is bang right. They are arguably the number one team in the world, let alone the official number two. So that comes with the pressure that everyone now wants to come and get you. And but whether it's going to affect the Ireland team, I don't think it is. If it helps the England players to play a better game, then I'm quite happy for him to use that. But I think realistically, there's massive pressure on both sides.
Okay, Mike, do you think it's possible that Ireland board a shit out of England tomorrow?
It's interesting tact for Mitch to go down that route. I think it's a compliment. I've been saying it a little bit on our podcast for a long time in terms of the way that Ireland play is very pragmatic, but you can get frustrated with it because you see when they play against USA or the second teams a bit low down that they give the ball so much air and they run in tries, but then against the better teams they play percentage effective physical rugby and are unbelievably good at it. So even though it frustrates opposition and they might want to call you boring, that is probably a big boost to Ireland, because it just means that they would like to do it, and they're not being able to do it, and that's why I think if England go tomorrow, and I thought Joe Smith played quite a good game in terms of saying, "Oh, we're expecting this brutality." He wants them to come with that physical game because he knows that that's a game that Ireland can quite easily dominate because they dominate possession. You've got two of the best kickers in the world to dominate territory, and then you just build the pressure on the opposition, and that's what England have done as I said, the last few times they've gone down there and they've come off second best. So it's England who need to change what they're doing and actually try and do something a little bit different to sort of to take Ireland out of their comfort zone. If you look at, even though the scoreline didn't quite say it, Scotland last year, who obviously threw the ball around like there's nothing tomorrow, made line breaks all over the place, and basic 2-on-1s stopped them from scoring a few tries. Now that's not to say they would have won, but they had success, and so did Wales. So have England got the balls to sort of go out there and try that and have a look at how that goes, or mix it up and do a bit of both? And it'd be interesting to see whether they have that.
Mike, I'd be interested to get your take on what it would be like for someone like Robbie Henshaw who's an excellent test midfielder, to go into a test level full-back. How easy would that be?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very big call. Obviously, Joe Smith doesn't do anything without thinking about it, rethinking about it, thinking about it again, and then triple checking. So he must be ultimately confident. Now, whether it's again another way to make England sort of maybe try and play a bit more territory and try and move him around and check out his positional play, it could be a genius move for making the opposition play how he wants. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's not going to be easy to do, because I don't how much time has he spent at fullback?
A little bit when he made his first cap for Ireland at fullback, and would have spent a good bit of his underage career, but not at international level. Has really no experience at all. And Joe Schmidt carefully dodged the question during the week. One question that we have for you, Mike, is
go on ahead. It's one of the hardest places on the field. I think he's got wingers now. Even though Stockdale's still quite young, he's got wingers who know what they're doing. So I'm sure they'll be chatting away to him left, right, and centre. So it is a difficult place on the field to switch to. But it'll be interesting to see how whether England try and use that maybe early on to see how his positional play is and see how his kicking game is and have a look at that side of it. But yeah, it's not going to be easy.
I noted, by the way, your response to the boring question. You were using words like effective and pragmatic, which are a bit more politically correct, I think.
He doesn't use those words on his podcast, do you, Mike?
Well, no, not necessarily. But the thing is, it frustrates me. But then that's exactly what it should do. And I can't ever say. I can say I want Ireland to play a more open style. I want to say that the things they use in attacks, for the runarounds, the crossfield kicks, they're all done with processes that give Johnny Sexton triggers on what he's going to do, and they're massively effective. It might be the same thing all the time, but that's because they don't make mistakes, so that's why they stick to it. So as much as you want to say, just go out and play a bit more, it's like, well, why do I need to? When we play the teams that we know we can dominate, we throw the ball around, we score lots of points. When we know we're in a game, we control the game. And as much as people want to say it's boring, or they want to say would like to see Stockdale with his hands on the ball more often, where Joe Smith finds his if you call it like Clive Woodward 1%ers, are in picking minute details and taking advantage of them. You look at that try against New Zealand. I don't know where that New Zealand winger was, why he was not around there, how far across the field he'd gone, why Aaron Smith was then flying across the field. But Joe Smith had seen that and has created a move to go down to back down that inside of that line out, and they've got what they wanted out of it. It's easy to criticise, but at the same time you've got to admire the brilliance at the same time.
We've been having a lot of debate here over the last week or 10 days about how many English players would make the Ireland 15. How many Irish players would make the England 15?
That's probably an easier question on Monday, is it?
Well, I think, it's a difficult one because it's obviously difficult. It's different systems, but if you go through class of players, second rows, we've both got very classy operators. Front row, obviously Best is just, he's come a bit into his own, but then you've got Furlong. who's just been outstanding. I can't wait to see that matchup with Mako. I think that's going to be fantastic. You get CJ Standing against Billy. I mean, I think there's close calls, but at the moment you always stick with the winners, don't you? You've got, that's why they're number 2 in the world. But there'll be some close competitions, but I think would get in at the moment. I think he's just on better form than what Ben Youngs is on. Johnny Sexton Farrell, it's who do you love? I think everyone pretty much likes them both. Interesting chat around them in terms of both being hot-headed, but Peter Stringer's been firing up, hasn't he, saying that they're going to target Farrell because he loses his cool, whereas Johnny keeps his cool. So there's so many interesting little matchups there that it's going to be great to see, and I just hope we get the spectacle we want, and we get an England win.
I'm hearing 15 players, Mike, by the way, that was as you went through the team there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If you look at them, there's genuine. That's what I mean, that England have the players. I mean, Ireland have this golden age of their players, but England have good players on that field. But they don't. I think what they're missing is consistency in selection in terms of comfortable. I know Eddie likes to take people out of their comfort zone, but sometimes you need a little bit of confidence in the environment you're going into. I don't think a lot of those guys have got it, so I don't think you necessarily see confident players always on the field. Whereas with Ireland, they're like a big Chevy. They're just so comfortable in what they do, and they're just quite easy to roll down that road. And if people aren't ready for them, they just dispatch them. They've just got that much experience and that much class.
Safe trip, Mike. Thanks for taking the call. Good luck tonight.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks a lot. Mike Tindall there on the line. He'll be one of the legends that lines out at the RDS tonight. Native great charities as well, so get yourself down there. Tickets on the gate. It's Ireland and Scotland versus England essentially. Ali Hogg is in there as well, and a couple of other Scots, so should be a belter. Get yourself along to it. Before we let you go, you're on duty for you're taking a trip of your own for France Wales tonight. What are you expecting?
It's hard to know. France have picked a very strong side on paper, guys who've performed well. Particularly there's a number of Toulouse players. I'm looking forward to seeing Intimac in the centre and Fofana. They're 2 guys who can excite. They've gone for the Clermont halfbacks, Lopez and Parra. I would have went for Dupont, the Toulouse scrum half. He's incredible. So he's kind of put this excitement in the centre, and then he's put this kind of pragmatic approach in Parra and Lopez at halfbacks. But they're the heaviest pack, I think, in the history of the Six Nations in international rugby, 150 or 60 stone.
Good French food, like that. Is that there?
Well, Willems in the second row and Vahamahina, Otonio, the loose head prop, or the tight head prop, they're all up on 130,
8 years since France have won it. They've London and Dublin to come. It's really must win for them, isn't it?
It's must win, and see how fit they are. It's a big pack, and they've had so many issues. They lost to Fiji in Paris in November. Wales then kind of under the radar a little bit. Good November, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, all right. Thanks a million as always, Quinny. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the games over the weekend, and thanks for your comments as well over the course of that. We'll bring some of those to you before we leave you. But before that, as we mentioned, it is an unbelievable weekend of big sport ahead. It'll all end on Sunday night in Atlanta with the Super Bowl. John Gonzalez of TheRinger.com was with us during the week. Here he is on why Sean McVay is the next Bill Belichick.
I think he's almost... Bill Belichick is very gruff with the media. He's very gruff in public. He doesn't really like answering questions or, really talking about anything that isn't football in that day's game and working with his players on the game plan. And McVay has a propensity to, be much more open and candid.
We've a text in from Phil in Sacramento, who's living in Tullamore in the Midlands here in Ireland, 2 very, very different places. And this probably touches on the nub of what a lot of the conversations this week have been about ahead of the Super Bowl. Does Sean McVay need to come up with trick plays to upset the Patriots' brains trust? The Patriots always seem to be able to scheme teams to death. They did it to the Chiefs. And as good as Sean McVay is as a brilliant offensive coach, Bill Belichick's had a couple of weeks to watch everything that the Rams have done. There's a general sense that McVay's going to have to come up with something that Belichick or nobody's seen before.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, that's something that happened last year in last year's Super Bowl, not to harp on the Eagles, but the Philly special definitely caught the Patriots by surprise, caught everybody by surprise, and it was expertly executed at the perfect moment. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean McVay had some trick plays in his pocket. That doesn't necessarily mean that he'll use them, but it's possible that he's got something up his sleeve that we haven't seen yet, that the Patriots haven't seen yet, and as a result, haven't been able to scheme for yet. But yeah, that's always been Bill Belichick's strength, being able to look at everything you've done and neutralize it, if not for an entire game, then certainly for the beginning of the game, and make you force you into halftime adjustments.
Yeah, that was our Super Bowl chatter of the week. Sean McVeigh was the guy that was going along the touchline with that video that went viral, where he's the guy who's solely employed to move him away from the...
Hold him back.
Touch judge or whatever.
The hold me back guy.
Hold me back.
Do you have a hold me back guy?
I do, yeah.
When you're out in Mullingar, outside of Chipper?
Lots of them. What would I be doing in Mullingar?
Althone.
Yeah. It's fine now, don't worry about it.
Much of muchness.
Don't worry about it. I mean, Tindall was some player. Sean Lonergan points out Michael Duffy says he was a brute and his era was quality. Fred McHugh says we haven't lost to the Aviva since 2013, a huge advantage. And Kevin Donoghue, we have to deal with Billy Vunipola. We must shut him down. So plenty of comments coming in on that. Thanks for those comments over the last little bit. Something for the weekend, or recommendations of what you should get up to this weekend. My one is, we mentioned the Peter Crouch podcast last week, which is very much on the light side of things, and this week it's something very much different to that. It's called Gladiator, Aaron Hernandez and Football Inc. It really is must listen. It's a multi-part podcast by Boston Globe and Wonderly Productions. Slick production, pretty grim story, all told. Abusive father and different mother. He left school early for football, got in with the wrong people, and without a doubt took one too many hits to the head. It's a story that's exceptionally well told. If you think you're familiar with the Aaron Hernandez story, have a listen to this. There's lots of tape from Hernandez when he was imprisoned and before he met his pretty grisly end as well. So it's must listen, and I know it's been out and about for a while. I only came to it a couple of weeks ago, but you will listen to it, and I think enjoy is quite the right word for it, but it is must listen stuff. That's my recommendation for you. It's not going to, you might need a little bit more than this weekend is what I'm saying. It's a few weeks investment.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's very, very good. Are you watching the Super Bowl this Sunday?
What time does it start at?
Probably around 11:30. I never, it's always around 11.
Last year I watched up to half time and I went to bed.
First half was better last year. So
was there not something that happened in the second half that, was there not?
There was the moment when the quarterback received a touchdown pass, which was pretty extraordinary. But the first half, you had the ball slipping through Tom Brady's hands, which was kind of a hilarious moment. Obviously, if you went to bed at halftime the previous year, it would be one of the most stupid things you ever could have done, because that was the 28-3 halftime score, which the Patriots ended up turning around to beat the Atlanta Falcons.
I'd say I'm going to watch the first half.
Do you think you're smart while watching Super Bowl? Do you want to know how to seem smart while watching Super Bowl?
I know I'm not smart while watching the Super Bowl, but I need to be smart on.
So if one of your American football fanatic friends end up calling you up this week and say, "Hey, Adrian, want to come over and eat some wings?" Probably be Jer. He says he's having wings on his own while watching the Super Bowl this week. So if Jer calls you up and says, "Hey, Adrian, come over to my house. We'll enjoy some wings and Bud Light, and we'll watch the game together," then I've got a couple of sentences for you. And if you're in a similar position, if you want to know how to sound smart while watching the Super Bowl, there's a couple of things you can say. So first of all, the first thing to say this weekend, and I think it's a given really, is this is a big play for the Los Angeles defense, because defense wins championships. If you say that to your American football loving friend, they will respect you so much more. You'll go right up their friends list. If you analyse the analysis though, then you become an extra. Then you become like a Super Bowl fanatic yourself.
And Irish people are good at that anyway. So
well, yeah, like that goes on. That's beyond friendship at that point with your American football friends. So you can say something like, "Wow, that Tony Romo guy is really good at analysing American football games on the television." If you say that, your American football friend will be like, "Wow, you really know the analysts." So definitely come up with that brand new information that Tony Romo is good at analysis. Now, if the Patriots happen to be losing at any point, so if the opposition have more points than the New England Patriots at any point, just say this cute sentence: "Don't forget Super Bowl 51, friends. Tom Brady, the GOAT, is never finished." So if you say that, your American football-loving friend will be like, "Wow, you really know what you're talking about." But if you use up all the above and you're just looking for something else, you can just throw out random statements that apply to American football. So here's a few examples of things you can say. "Oh my God, look at that line of scrimmage. Holy hell, did you see that pass rush?" And "Wow, that guy's catching radius blew my socks off." So if you say that to Jared this weekend, you'll be in the good books. Or finally, of course, you can say something like, "Maroon 5, oh no, take me back to Prince in 2007. So there, if you use all those quick phrases, you're going to be known as the hand egg expert in the room.
Just don't talk about the line of scrimmage as they're lining up field goal.
Well, you know a lot more than I thought. There you go.
What? What's a reach circumference? What did you call it?
What did I call it? I called it...
He doesn't even remember his own.
A catching radius.
What's that? Like your...
So, yeah, exactly.
Sort of
the reach of the arm.
Your arm reach. How long is your arm?
If your catching radius is large, your throw doesn't need to be that accurate. So if you combine an accurate quarterback with a big catching radius, you've got a very lethal offence up and running there.
Do you have a large catching radius?
You can move the chains regularly with two players like that, Adrian.
How's your catching radius?
My catching radius is sublime. Once I get in behind the line of scrimmage and the linebacker is outside of my own catching radius, then I am making that reception.
Are we talking in euphemisms or is this actual language?
Well, it can be whatever you want it to be.
Coming up at Off the Ball this weekend, we're going to be live from 8:15, obviously, on Monday morning as well. Lots of reaction to that Super Bowl. A reminder that Mike Carlson's going to be on the line from Atlanta. Alan Quinlan will reflect on the weekend's rugby. Anthony Moyles is going to join yourself and Moylesy on Monday, is it?
Yeah, Moylesy, big NFL fan. So he'll obviously be watching
Bleary-eyed.
GAA, and of course the rugby is the big one, isn't it?
How are you going to manage that? It'll be over at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, I did it till half-time last year and went to bed.
Well, I'm glad you didn't do it the previous year when it was a 28-3 scoreline at half-time and it was like turned around in the second half and Tom Brady dropped the ball in the first half.
Wow,
the scrimmage had a massive catching radius. I'm just glad you didn't do it that
You
year.
must have got A+ in American football class in high school. You've really blown my socks off with your knowledge and intuition. Half-time is my target. And if I could, once I see Maroon 5, I'm going to bed. And I think that's a metaphor for life.
Stay up and watch the full thing, come in and do the show, and then just get out here early on Monday.
I could do that. We'll see if Tommy allows me to leave. That's a whole other layer of politics to negotiate.
So that's Monday. Gerard's going to be eating chicken wings and drinking Bud Light on Sunday night. So that's why he ate here on Monday morning. And plenty coming up and Off the Ball over the weekend as well. 1 to 6 Saturday and Sunday. Live commentary, those two Premier League games. We mentioned a little bit earlier on, and we'll have reporters around all the Six Nations. So there is lots of reasons to tune our way over the weekend. But I'll leave you on a comment from Kevin Donoghue on YouTube this morning. Ireland to win by 15 points. That'll do for us. Good morning.